Welcome back, everybody. It's your boy Sean, the American in Krakow, back in his studio, about to talk to you again about one of his riding experiences. Since I've been posting videos, I've received a couple of questions about the big one, the accident that I had last year that kind of took me out of commission for a little while. They're asking questions about the accident itself, what did I learn, if anything, from that accident, and how did I get back into riding? Like, was there any doubt? Was there any hesitation? Was I nervous about getting back on a motorcycle? And I want to take just a minute to address that. So here we go. The accident itself happened on a really busy intersection here in Krakow, near the Jubilat building, crossing over to that bridge, so heading towards Congress Center. Now, I can openly say that the incidents leading up to the accident, I was riding way too aggressively for the traffic conditions. I was also not wearing any gear, which didn't help. But ultimately, the cause of the accident itself was something that was a little bit out of my control, but I could have controlled my reactions and how I got engaged in that incident that could have prevented the accident. So what really happened was I was on my way home. I kind of ran into another rider. We were both kind of being aggressive and egging each other on to see who could go faster or who could move in and out of the traffic situation a little quicker. We were having fun. That being said, we get to the intersection where it's about to go onto the bridge. The lights were green. We were in the bus lane, and then we had to move over to the right lane to get onto the bridge, and I ended up directly behind a bus. I looked over to the left lane. I looked behind me. The left lane was clear. There was nothing behind that was going to be in my way, and I immediately, under acceleration, went straight over to the left lane. Unfortunately, the moment I cleared out from behind the bus and can see in the lane, the vehicle that was ahead was now at a full stop. And I was still on my throttle, so I was still accelerating into the back of this car. I did react quickly, at least in my opinion, I reacted as quickly as I could. I jumped on the brakes and then quickly realized there was no stopping between me and this car, that I was going to hit this car if I stayed on this current path. I then tried to split the stopped vehicle and the bus. Now, I had already used up some of the distance between me and the back of the car trying to stop. So whatever that distance was now, it was definitely reduced. And now I'm trying to make the maneuver to get between the car and the bus and not hit either of them. I mostly made it. I almost made it. Most of me made it between the car and the bus. Unfortunately, my left knee didn't clear the rear of the car. So still under braking, but with great momentum, the left knee just went straight into the back of the car. I pretty much tore out, I think, her rear lights. I think I dented her trunk. I don't remember the exact details of what happened to the vehicle because I didn't get a chance to look at it directly, just what was told to me. And as soon as my knee came in contact with the vehicle, I just catapulted off the bike. I just went flying right over the bike, landing in front of the bus, which was already stopped, so there was no risk of me being hit. My bike, on the other hand, bounced off the bus, then hit the car, and then fell over. And I think in the process of that, I think the front wheel of the bike kind of hit one of the wheels or somewhere on the front of the bus and crumpled the front of the bike. And then the bike just laid down. And then, I kind of gave myself the one over. I've been in a few accidents before, a couple times on a bike, several times in a car, some really serious accidents in cars. And I kind of did my self-assessment, realized, okay, fingers, arms, hands, my right leg seemed okay, my face, my head, everything seems all right. Now, of course, I could still have some sort of spinal injury from landing on my back. So when I flipped over, I didn't land on my head. I actually did a complete flip and landed on my back. So ultimately, I didn't sit up, I didn't get up, but I managed to get my helmet off, and I started talking to people, or people were trying to talk to me. And, they informed me that they called an ambulance and, asked me if I was okay, all the normal things people do in an accident. I'm very thankful for all of them. There was even a woman on the bus who brought a pillow from the bus and she put it under my head because I was laying on the ground, because I knew something was wrong with my leg. I couldn't move my leg properly. I could wiggle my toes, but I just couldn't move the leg properly, and I knew it was in need of an ambulance. So I asked them to call the ambulance. They said they already had, and from that point on, I was getting patched up. I'm not going to go into details on the care and what happened after that. All I can say is I was thankful that the medical system here in Poland was able to take care of me. I'm here, I survived. But now comes the part of like, well, what happened? Why was the car stopped? Turns out there were 4 guys on a stag do from the UK who were not exactly sober, and they decided to run across the bridge while traffic had the right of way. And as they ran across the bridge, all the vehicles had to come to an immediate stop, not to hit them. And this is what caused that immediate backup that caused me to now crash into the back of that car. It happens. It was not my fault per se. Yes, it was their fault, but at the same time, had I not been riding aggressively, I probably would have been able to stop in a safe distance and avoid any injury. So, what did I learn? That I should ride less aggressively. Not really. I still ride pretty aggressive. I don't believe I ride that aggressive anymore in the city. I mean, if I still have some open roads or even in the city, but maybe later in the evening, early in the morning, no traffic, I might still get on it pretty hard sometimes. But most importantly, I think the lesson that I learned was not a lesson that I learned because it's something I knew. It's just something I ignored, or a mistake that I made is, be aware of your surroundings and ensure that when you're moving from point A to point B on your motorcycle, you have a clear path to do so. And I was behind a bus, hard accelerating blindly into another lane. And that was my mistake, right? I should have edged over, so that would have forced me to maintain at least the speed of the bus, verify that the lane was clear, and then pulled into it. That's what I should have done. And had I have done that, I would have completely avoided this accident. Because they managed to stop. The bus and the car both managed to stop. I didn't because I accelerated blindly into a scenario. So now we come into the point of, well, how did I get back on the bike? Did I have any issues getting back on the bike? Was I scared of getting back on the bike? Did I have any doubts? And I can immediately say, once I got past the initial understanding that yes, I will walk again, because there was a brief moment, not that the doctors said anything in particular, it was just the injury was so unique to me, like I've never been that injured before. I wasn't 100% confident that I would be able to properly ever walk again. Once that part was clear, once the doctors said, oh no, this is the problem and this is what needs to happen and you have 100% chance of, full recovery, with the proper rehab and exercise, I was like, oh, cool. The next question out of my mouth was, so when can I get back on my bike? So for me, there was never a doubt of getting back on the bike. I'm pretty sure the first questions I asked were, how is the bike? Where is the bike? Things like that. I had already had another bike. I had actually purchased the FTR that day. So I was actually on the way home from the dealership when that accident occurred. And the moment that I could start walking with my orthopedic brace and not having to use the crutches, I immediately started kind of tempting my fate and getting downstairs and checking out, jumping on the FTR, trying to pick it up off the side stand because, it's on the left. So did I have enough force or strength in the leg to get it up off the side stand, stand it up, lean it a little bit with the leg. And with the orthopedic brace, I did. And not too long after, I got back on the bike and I started riding it. I think the first thing I did was ride it around inside my parking lot. See how it felt with this pretty chunky orthopedic brace that was all from halfway up my thigh all the way down to my ankle and a huge double hinge on the knee section. How that felt, how it felt hugging the tank with that. And it felt okay. Was it the best idea to start riding at that point? No, for sure not. I can tell you that it wasn't because I've dropped the bike a ton of times during this period. And in most cases, it wasn't like I got into an accident and crashed or something like that. It was just I stopped and I was putting my foot down and I ended up on some kind of uneven surface, whether it was gravel or a broken tarmac in a parking area, uneven ground, riding on grass and stopping in a field. Just any situation where I either had to lean the bike a little bit more than I was expecting, or the ground underneath my feet was not secure or wasn't where I expected it to be, and I ended up dropping a little bit more onto the left than I expected. The leg wasn't strong enough, and if the brace wasn't in the perfectly straight position that would support the leg, anything in a bent position of the knee, my muscles had to take it, and they weren't there. They weren't ready. I was in a wheelchair for a month, so atrophy had kicked in, and I was very weak, and I am still very weak in that leg. I can hold the bike now, I can pick it up on my own, things like that, but compared to my right leg, it's still very weak. But then, any amount of unevenness, I fell. And I fell numerous times. And I laughed every time. The people around me were very scared. And I'm not going to take that away from them. They were, because they were afraid that I did damage to my knee, or I was doing damage to my knee. But I didn't. I hadn't. No additional damage was done, except for damage to my pride. I did burn myself once pretty good on my right leg because it landed on the exhaust and I was kind of pinned for a little bit. But other than that, I got help. I got out from under the bike, they helped me up, and I got back on the bike and I continued to ride. There was never a point in time where I was scared that I would never ride or I wouldn't get back on a bike. I think riding helps me cope in a lot of ways and helps me deal with some issues, and also sometimes helps me defocus so I don't just get stressed out on one particular issue. So riding for me was a form of like mental therapy in most cases anyway. So I definitely needed to do it. I probably could have waited a little bit longer before I started, but the longer I waited, the more things were stirring in my head, and it worked out in the end for me. Now, I will acknowledge that the very first time I rode past that intersection where I had my accident, I clenched up a little bit. I had a little bit of a thought of, oh, I remember what happened here. And then I rode right past it. And I think that every time I go past that intersection, and it doesn't stop me and hinder me in any way, what it does is it just reminds me of, hey, you know what you're supposed to do on a bike. Make sure you do it, because when you don't, things like that happen. Now, aside from me thinking of just that one thing that I could have done differently, there's a lot of things as a rider that you need to do and need to be aware of to ensure that you're as safe as possible when riding a motorcycle. There's a guy on YouTube here. His name is Ryan. He's on FortNine. That's the channel. I think it's a Canadian motorcycle shop or gear shop. And he does a video. I'm going to put a link in the description for it. That it's talking about how to ride invisible. And basically it talks about how that, in most cases where a motorcyclist has an incident with another vehicle, the driver of that other vehicle will make a statement something like, hey, I never saw him. I never saw the bike. I didn't see it. It's not just something that people say. And Ryan goes into detail explaining why they didn't see you and how you, as a motorcyclist, should be riding as if you're invisible. So as if people around you don't see you. Anyway, you check that out, and it was really eye-opening. I don't think I necessarily learned, except for the science behind it, but the recommendations and the tips and tricks, they were all things I think I had already known and picked up over the time of riding, but it was over a lifetime of riding that I learned that. Watching that video and understanding all those points would have saved me a lot of headaches and a lot of missteps that I made over that my span of riding. So definitely check it out. If it's going to help you in any way, trust me, that alone makes me feel awesome, because anything that I can do to help you be safe out there, or get on a bike, or take any doubt out of your mind or reservations out of your mind about getting on a bike, I'm happy for it, because the more of us that are out there, the better it is for all of us. But, that's not the point of this. This is the point of just kind of addressing the questions on what I learned, and was there any doubt? And for me, there was never any doubt. I mean, I love riding. I knew I was going to get back on a bike. As soon as I knew I was going to walk again, there was no doubt I was getting back on a bike. Anyway, That's going to do it. This video is probably way too long already. I just wanted to address those questions and get that out there for everybody. Thank you again for joining me. If you're still here, click a like if you like the story, if you like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my Instagram. The link will be in the outro. Thanks again, all. Peace.